And1 is a phrase in basketball. In organized games, like in the NBA, it refers to when a player gets fouled while making a shot. They get the 2 points for the basket and 1 free throw.
Drew the foul, counted and one!
But in random pickup games, typically without a referee or free throws at all, it's really just a way to brag to your opponent. Saying and1 is like saying, I was able to make that shot even though you fouled me. Do you see what I mean there? And the brand and1 was created to reflect that trash-talking street ball attitude. It started out in 1993 as a line of t-shirts featuring an athletic-looking faceless basketball player saying cleverly insulting phrases. Maybe the most famous one said, "Pass, save yourself the embarrassment," but I think my personal favorite is, "Go to church, pray you don't guard me." I know, it's overly aggressive, but that's the point. That's the culture of street ball. Unorganized games at local parks with plenty of trash talk and hopefully flashy moves to back it up. I always think of the movie White Men Can't Jump, released only 1 year before the start of And1, as a good example of old school emerging street ball. I mean, street ball has existed in some form almost since the creation of basketball itself, but the version of it that we know today was already taking shape and gaining traction in the early 1990s, when And1 came along to catapult its popularity. Amazingly, within just a few years, a small t-shirt business grew into one of the most desired athletic brands, competing right there alongside giants of the industry like Nike and Adidas. Listen to this, in the 2000s, Activision and Ubisoft published video games that were centered around And1. Tell me if it was the same for you, but there was definitely a time in my life as a kid when I thought that And1 was the coolest brand out there. And honestly, I cannot imagine anybody still thinking that. Today, it is essentially a discount brand. You know, the cheaper alternative you find at stores like Walmart when you are not willing to pay the premium for something higher quality or more respected. And it is sad to see them like this. So for this video, I want to talk about the unique history of And1 while identifying 5 of the biggest reasons behind their decline, with the first reason being mainstream appeal. Starting with the number 4 overall pick in the 1996 NBA draft, Stephon Marbury, And1 would sign young, emerging players to endorsement deals. And these players that they signed would typically exemplify that aggressive street ball attitude, like Larry Johnson or Latrell Sprewell, who is probably most famous for choking his coach at a practice once. What many would consider their big break, the thing that took And1 to that next level, was the 2000 dunk contest, where Vince Carter had one of the most memorable performances ever while wearing a pair of red and white And1 tie cheese. For one of the dunks, he even put the ball under his leg, and that was the perfect way to feature the shoes. It's hard to find reliable numbers for a private company like this, but it looks like 2001 was their peak sales year, with something like 40% of the NBA wearing their shoes. From there, now that they had momentum, they became more aggressive by signing endorsement contracts with bigger, more established players like Kevin Garnett and Chauncey Billups, who actually won the finals wearing And1s. I know everything I'm saying sounds really good at first, but remember, And1 was established as an underground street ball brand, and the NBA is pretty much the opposite of underground street ball. To put it simple, they were out of their league, picking a fight with much stronger competitors that they simply could not win, leading me to the next reason behind their decline: competition. Look, even though And1 was making a respectable impact, they were never anywhere near the same size or had the same resources as the more established brands like Nike or Adidas, who, unlike And1, were selling products for all different sports in all different countries around the world. $281 million in sales at And1's peak in 2001 sounds like a lot until you compare it to the other two that were well into the billions. And1 was essentially able to creep in under the radar as street ball became more popular until the others noticed what was happening, or at the very least felt it was worth it to respond. In 2001, Nike made their famous freestyle commercial featuring NBA players and famous street ballers doing some fancy dribbling to the music. Soon after, it was parodied in Scary Movie 2, exposing it to more people and helping it live on in people's minds. And then, maybe more notably, in 2003, the street ball competition show Nike Battlegrounds premiered on MTV, which I have to think was a direct response to the And1 mixtape tour. Which means that I'm going to have to go back for a second. See, in the late 1990s, Rafer Alston, also known as Skip to My Lou, was the streetballer featured in AND1's original VHS mixtape. It was a compilation of his flashy plays set to hip-hop music that AND1 distributed, often by including it with the purchase of one of their products. Much like everything else with this company, it started as a real underground effort that quickly started becoming mainstream. That original Skip mixtape led to more mixtapes that ultimately led to the mixtape tour, where some of the best street ballers would travel to different cities competing against local street ballers, often one-on-one, who were hoping to be featured on future mixtapes or even win a spot on the tour. In fact, the Professor, famous street baller who I think most of us know from YouTube at this point, won a spot on that tour in 2003 and quickly became one of the most famous people associated with the brand, later being featured alongside some of the others on the cover of Sports Illustrated. That tour became so big that it was aired on ESPN and expanded to around 30 countries. So getting back to the competition, Nike Battlegrounds was their response to it, and various other efforts by Nike and Adidas pulled people away from AND1. I should remind you that most of the top players in the NBA were already signed with one of those two companies, and that many of the players that were endorsed by AND1 were leaving to sign better contracts with these competitors. For example, Kevin Garnett and Chauncey Billups both left AND1 in favor of signing what would become lifetime endorsement deals with Adidas. By 2005, AND1 had lost its momentum, sales were falling, and the company was sold to American Sporting Goods, and that sale led to further complications, leading me to my next reason on the list, changing ownership. AND1 was founded by three businessmen who had recently graduated from the University of Pennsylvania. The idea for it was technically derived from a school project, and the three of them remained in charge through the height of its popularity. However, in 2003, co-founder Tom Austin left the company, and 2 years later, the other co-founders, Seth Berger and Jay Gilbert, decided to sell it. And I think it is safe to say that the new owners did not have the same passion or potentially the same talent for this type of business. Again, with a private company, all I can really do is speculate what was happening behind the scenes, but it seems like as the customers and audiences started slipping away, it became inefficient to maintain such a large operation, so they responded to that by downsizing. I'm thinking they invested less money into new designs and performance features, the tour became smaller each year until it was discontinued, so you can see how decisions like that can reduce the company to a stripped down version of what it once was. But then, as if things weren't uncertain enough, AND1 kept getting new owners. It's actually a little confusing to go through the timeline. The company who had bought AND1 was acquired by an even larger company who sold AND1 to a company that was later bought by a different company that filed for bankruptcy in 2021. So as you could imagine, all of this was very distracting. I mean, this would be an unlikely comeback anyway, and I would say almost impossible with so many corporate changes happening. Every so often, they do something that feels promising. A few that stand out to me would be in 2012, they signed an endorsement deal with Lance Stevenson, who I think was the perfect person to represent the brand. At a young age, he became well known in the New York streetball communities for his flashy playing style, and he will probably be most remembered for this clip where he blew in LeBron's ear during the 2014 NBA playoffs. In 2018, they brought back Kevin Garnett as creative director and global ambassador. In 2026, they brought back the Professor as a brand ambassador and a director of talent. I don't know exactly what a lot of this means. They seem to be positive moves, but I cannot imagine any of them mattering too much unless AND1 connects with a company that has a lot of money and a lot of influence. And even then, it would likely be very different than it was the first time. Part of the reason I say that is because of the next reason on my list, the decline of streetball. There's really not much to say here other than the fact that streetball is not what it used to be. Younger players are coming up through the AAU, different playing styles are being valued that help with injury prevention. The NBA implementing a stricter dress code in 2005 likely contributed to a more proper and professional image for the league. Right now, it seems like a brand focused on streetball can only become so popular, but then if they don't focus on streetball, that would not really feel like AND1 anymore, so I don't know where they go from here. Along those same lines, I should also mention that mixtapes have obviously also declined. Almost since the mixtape tour ended in 2009, most people have been watching their basketball compilations over the internet. The players no longer need a company like AND1 for their moves to be seen. I think the Professor himself, with his 2 billion YouTube views since his channel was created in 2009, has proven that better than anybody. Honestly, when you think about it, it is not surprising that a company built on streetball style mixtapes is not doing well in the 2020s. It it is not a practical business anymore, and becoming a mass-market, low-end alternative may have been one of the more realistic ways to keep it alive, especially when you consider the final reason on my list: the brand has become lame. It's a blunt way to say it, but I started off this video by saying I cannot even imagine someone thinking that AND1 is still cool, which is a major issue for a fashion brand. So many cutbacks over the years have led to less impressive products that I believe are mostly manufactured by third parties with licensing deals at this point. Back when that tour was still happening, they were accused of offering the players contracts that were way below what they were worth, sort of taking advantage of their vulnerable position as lower class ball players and profiting from it. It can all be debated. I would even debate that trash talking and cockiness has become less accepted in favor of humility. Whatever the reason, the fact of the matter is that AND1 has been fading for about 25 years now, to a point where it is no longer a desirable brand. Let me know in the comments, what are your thoughts about AND1, and have they changed over the years? What I really want to know is if you have worn their products at any point, when was it, and what was the appeal at the time? Also, do you agree with my reasons behind their decline, or do you think something should be added or subtracted from the list? And finally, are you more optimistic about their future than I am, and what exactly do they need to do to make a comeback? And any other thoughts you have about AND1 or anything else in this video, leave them in the comments. I'd like to hear what you have to say. Thank you for watching.